Rain poured as I stood by my mother's grave, the cold soaking through my coat. I whispered apologies I could never say while she was alive. I missed her more than I thought possible. My mother died just a month ago. It was sudden. One day she was tired, the next she was gone. There was no time to prepare, no long goodbye. Just emptiness. She had left everything to me in her will, the house, her savings, and the insurance money. I didn't know what to do with any of it. I could barely get out of bed most days. I felt lost, so when Aunt Brenda said she would help, I agreed. She showed up the day after the funeral with flowers and a suitcase. She said I shouldn't be alone and that she'd take care of the paperwork, the house, and me. At first, it felt like kindness. She made tea, answered phone calls, handled people I didn't want to speak to. I let her sleep in the guest room and told myself this was only for a short while. But days passed, then weeks, and something started to change. She moved her things into my mother's bedroom without asking. She wore her clothes, even her jewelry. I found her sitting in my mother's old chair, sipping wine like it had always been hers. I asked her why, and she just looked at me calmly and said, "Your life died with her. I'm all you've got left, and I decide what that means." It didn't feel like help anymore. It felt like she had claimed something that didn't belong to her. I felt too tired to fight. I was still grieving, still confused, still trying to understand what my life looked like now. So when she said the insurance company needed someone with more experience to handle the money and suggested I sign a few papers to make things smoother, I did. I didn't read them closely. I trusted her. She was family. I started noticing more strange things. My name wasn't on the utility bills anymore. Letters from the bank stopped coming to me. When I asked Brenda about it, she said she was just trying to keep things organized. But I felt like I was disappearing from my own life. One morning, I went to get an old document from the home safe, the deed to the house. I wanted to check something small, just for my own peace of mind. I expected to see my name there, like my mother had promised. It wasn't. My name had been replaced. Brenda's name was on the deed. I read it again and again, my hands shaking. I felt like I was drowning. I hadn't signed anything that gave her the house. How had she done this? Why would she do this? I ran outside. The rain had started again, soft but steady. I ended up back at my mother's grave without even thinking. I knelt in the wet grass and cried, not from the cold, but from the ache in my chest. I told her I was sorry. I told her I didn't know how to fix it. I asked for her strength. I didn't know what to do next. But something in me shifted that day. I realized that grief had made me quiet, but not weak. Brenda had stolen something precious. Not just the house, but the trust I'd placed in her. I didn't know how, but I was going to get it back. Things got worse after I found out the house wasn't in my name anymore. Brenda changed. She wasn't pretending to be kind now. She treated me like I didn't belong in my own home. She locked the kitchen cupboards, even the ones with simple things like cereal and tea. She said it was better this way. More order, less mess. I wasn't allowed to touch the thermostat. She turned the heat off at night and told me to wear more layers if I was cold. She left notes around the house. Not kind reminders, mean ones. One on the fridge said, "Food isn't free." Another on the bathroom mirror said, "Grown women clean up after themselves." I felt small every time I saw them, like I was a stranger in the place I grew up in. When I asked her about the money from the insurance, she said there were issues with the paperwork. She told me the bank wouldn't release the funds unless someone with more legal power stepped in. She said she needed something called power of attorney to handle it all. I didn't know much about that. She talked fast, used big words, and sounded like she knew what she was doing. I was tired, still deep in grief, so I signed the paper. She started dressing in my mom's clothes every day. Not just the sweaters or scarves, everything. She walked around like the house was hers now. She wore my mother's rings, her shoes, even her perfume. Once, I heard her talking on the phone, calling herself the matriarch of the family. That word hit me hard. It was something my mother used to say with a laugh, but when Brenda said it, it felt wrong. She moved fully into my mother's bedroom. She rearranged the furniture, changed the curtains, put her photos on the wall. The space looked different, colder. All the little touches my mom had added were gone. She didn't ask if it was okay. She just did it. I wasn't even allowed to stay in my old room. Brenda said it was too childish for someone my age. She moved my things into the small guest room down the hall. The bed there was hard and the window barely open. I lay awake most nights staring at the ceiling, wondering how everything had changed so fast. Every time I tried to speak up, Brenda acted like I was overreacting. She told me to be thankful she was helping. She reminded me I had no job, no money, and no clue how to manage a house. She said I was lucky she stepped in when she did. I started believing it, even though it hurt to hear. Sometimes I looked in the mirror and didn't recognize myself. I wasn't living, just surviving. I walked quietly through the house, trying not to upset her. I didn't touch anything that might make her angry. I didn't invite anyone over. I stopped talking to friends. Brenda said it was better to keep things private, and I listened. I didn't know who I was without my mother. I had no plan, no direction, and now no control over the home that once felt safe. Brenda had taken over everything, and I didn't know how to stop her. I kept thinking maybe she would calm down, maybe things would go back to normal. But they never did. Brenda started talking to people behind my back. At first, I didn't think much of it. She would be on the phone with relatives or chatting with neighbors. But I began to notice how they looked at me differently after they spoke with her. They started acting distant, like they didn't trust me. One day, I overheard part of a phone call. Brenda was telling someone that I wasn't well. She said I was having a hard time accepting reality. She mentioned that I was on strong medication and couldn't think clearly. That wasn't true. I wasn't taking anything, but the way she said it made it sound real. After that, small things started to make me doubt myself. Brenda would say things I didn't remember, then act shocked when I said I didn't say or do them. She would tell me we had talked about something already, like signing papers or making plans, but I had no memory of it. I started to wonder if maybe I was forgetting things. Maybe I really was unstable, like she said. She told the family I was depressed and talked about hurting myself. I had never said that. I was sad, yes, but I wasn't thinking like that. But she kept saying it to others. I even found a bottle of pills in my room that I didn't buy. She must have put them there. She wanted people to think I was a danger to myself. It scared me how far she was willing to go. Then she suggested I see a therapist. She said it might help me get clarity. I agreed. Maybe talking to someone would help me make sense of everything. She gave me a name and said she had already booked the appointment. I didn't think twice. I just went. The therapist's office was neat and quiet. At first, I felt hopeful, but during the sessions, something felt wrong. Every time I tried to talk about how I felt trapped or confused, the therapist changed the subject. She kept saying things like, "It's important to trust those who care for you," and "Sometimes we must give up control for our own good." It didn't feel like support. It felt like I was being told to stop thinking for myself. I started to wonder if Brenda had picked this therapist on purpose. She paid for the sessions, and I never saw a bill. I didn't choose this person, and now I wasn't sure if I could trust them. Each session left me feeling worse, not better. When I asked simple questions, like whether I should be concerned about my legal rights or property, the therapist would gently change the topic. She told me I was too emotionally raw to think clearly and that I should focus on healing, not control. It felt like a trap. Every path led back to Brenda having more power. I began keeping my thoughts to myself. I smiled and nodded in therapy, but I stopped sharing real things. I knew something wasn't right, but I didn't know who I could trust anymore. I didn't feel safe. I started writing things down. What I said, what Brenda said, what happened each day, just to remind myself of what was real. I needed some way to hold on to the truth. I was scared of my own mind. I had never felt that way before. But when someone keeps telling you that you're broken, you start to believe it. I didn't know what was true anymore. But deep down, I knew I had to find out. I finally decided to call the insurance company myself. I wanted to check on the money my mother had left me. I gave them my name and my mother's details. The woman on the phone was polite at first, but then she said something that made my heart drop. She told me the policy had already been claimed. The money was gone. I asked how that could be. I hadn't claimed anything. She said someone using my name and information had called weeks ago. The claim had already been processed and paid. I froze. I told her that person wasn't me. She said the file showed someone with legal authority had sent in the document. A power of attorney form, signed and notarized. I asked for a copy. When it arrived, I felt sick. The signature looked like mine, but I had never signed that paper. The name of the notary didn't look real either. I searched for the notary's name online. Nothing came up. No office, no license, no person. I knew now that something very wrong had happened. Brenda had done this. She had taken the money. I didn't know how to fix it alone. I needed help. I searched for a lawyer near me and booked a consultation. The lawyer sounded kind over the phone and said they could help me look into the fraud. I felt hopeful for the first time in weeks. I printed out everything, copies of the forged papers, notes of the calls I made, and the name of the fake notary. The day before the meeting, I got a call from the lawyer's office. The appointment was canceled. No reason, just a short message. "We can't take the case anymore." I called back, but no one picked up. I left messages, but no one replied. Later that night, Brenda walked into the kitchen smiling. She leaned on the counter and said, "You're wasting your time. I know people." Her voice was calm, but her words felt like a warning. I didn't answer. I just stared at her. That's when it really hit me. This wasn't just family trouble. This was something bigger. Brenda hadn't just taken over the house or moved into my mother's room. She had taken money that wasn't hers, faked legal papers, and lied to people in power. And now she was making sure no one would help me fight back. I felt trapped. I didn't know who to trust, and every step I tried to take was blocked. I was scared, but I also started to feel angry. I thought of my mother, how hard she had worked to leave something. I thought of how Brenda smiled like none of it mattered. I realized this wouldn't end on its own. Brenda wasn't going to stop. She had planned this carefully. I had to find a way to stand up, even if no one believed me. I couldn't let her take everything. I had lost so much already. I wasn't going to lose myself too. I went up to the attic to get some space. I needed to breathe. The house didn't feel like home anymore, but the attic was still untouched. Dust covered everything. Old boxes were stacked in the corners. I started moving them around, not really looking for anything. I just wanted to feel closer to my mom again. One of the boxes was taped shut. It had my mother's handwriting on it. I recognized it right away. My hands shook as I opened it. Inside were letters, notebooks, and some old photographs. They smelled like her. I sat down on the floor and began to read. The first few letters were from years ago, letters she had written but never sent. Some were to friends, some to me. Then I found the journals. Her words were quiet, careful, but full of worry. She wrote about Brenda. Page after page, I read how my mother didn't trust her. She wrote about arguments they had when they were younger. She said Brenda always wanted more, always felt left out, and couldn't let things go. As I read more, the pages became darker. My mother wrote about fears, not just about getting sick, but about what might happen if she wasn't around anymore. One sentence stood out. If I die suddenly, don't trust her. I stopped reading for a moment. I just stared at the page. My mother had tried to warn me. Tears rolled down my face, but I kept going. I needed to know more. I found a small black recorder in the box. I wasn't sure it still worked, but when I pressed play, I heard her voice. It felt like she was right there in the room with me. She spoke softly, like she didn't want anyone else to hear. She said the recorder was for me, in case anything happened. She told me that years ago, Brenda had stolen her identity. She opened credit cards in her name and caused problems that took years to fix. She said Brenda had always been jealous, always wanted what wasn't hers. My mom said she tried to forgive her, tried to give her another chance, but she never forgot. In the recording, she said, "She's not just trying to take over. She wants to become me." That sentence made my heart drop. I thought back to how Brenda wore her clothes, used her perfume, even took her room. It all made sense now. It wasn't just about money or property. Brenda wanted to erase my mom and replace her. I sat in the attic for a long time after that. I listened to the recording again. I reread the journal pages. Everything I had been feeling was real. I wasn't losing my mind. Brenda had been planning this for a long time. My mother had tried to protect me, even after she was gone. She had left behind the truth, hidden in the attic, waiting for me to find it. I felt pain, but also strength. I wasn't alone anymore. My mother had seen this coming. I packed the letters and the recorder carefully. I knew I'd need them. I wasn't sure what I would do next, but I felt something shift inside me. For the first time in a while, I didn't feel powerless. I felt ready to fight. After finding the truth, I knew I had to be careful. I couldn't confront Brenda right away. She was smart and always watching. So I started small. I kept my phone with me at all times. I turned on the recorder whenever we talked. I began writing down everything she said and did, dates, times, her exact words. I saved all her notes, took photos of every document I could find, and made copies. I didn't just keep them on my phone. I created a private folder online and uploaded everything, just in case something happened to my phone or laptop. I didn't want to lose anything. Every day I added more. Bit by bit, I was building a record. Something solid. Something real. Brenda started noticing I was quieter. I didn't argue anymore. I just nodded and left the room. That's when she began to act strange. She searched my room when I wasn't home. I knew because things were moved. She even started yelling for no reason, accusing me of spying on her. She called me sneaky. Her calm act was slipping. One night, she slammed the door so hard it cracked the wall. Her face was red, her voice loud. She said I was trying to make her look crazy. I stayed quiet. I knew she was scared. She didn't know what I had, and that made her nervous. She followed me around the house. She asked too many questions. She even unplugged the Wi-Fi once, hoping to cut off access to something. That's when I knew I needed help. I remembered my mom had a cousin we hadn't seen in years, someone who used to work in law. I found his number in one of her old address books. I called and explained as much as I could without saying too much over the phone. He agreed to meet me. When we met, I showed him the recordings, the fake papers, and the notes from my mom's attic. He listened without interrupting. Then he looked at me and said, "This is serious, and you've done the right thing." I felt seen, maybe for the first time in months. He helped me write a formal complaint. We sent it to the right offices: fraud, identity theft, financial abuse. He told me to stay calm and keep collecting proof. I followed his advice exactly. I didn't rush. I didn't let Brenda see what I was doing. I wasn't just grieving anymore. I wasn't lost. I was getting stronger. Every file, every word recorded, gave me more control. Brenda had taken so much, but she hadn't taken my mind. She hadn't taken the truth. And now, I was ready to do something with it. Brenda began acting even more strange. She started limping around the house and holding her arm like she was hurt. She told me to stay away from her and warned me not to touch her. At first, I didn't understand what she was doing. Then it became clear. One afternoon, 2 police officers came to the door. They said someone had reported me for elder abuse. I stood there frozen. They asked to come inside and talk. Brenda appeared behind them with a bandage on her face and a tearful look. She pointed at me and said I was unstable and violent. I felt sick. I couldn't believe she would lie like that. She had scratched herself and made fake bruises to look like I had hurt her. But I didn't panic. I had proof. I asked the officers to follow me to the living room. I showed them the small security camera I had hidden on a shelf. Then I opened my laptop and played the footage from the last 2 days. In the video, you could see Brenda hurting herself. She had hit her own arm on the table and scratched her face in front of the mirror. The officers watched quietly. I handed them copies of the footage and asked them to include it in their report. After they left, Brenda locked herself in her room. She didn't speak to me for the rest of the day. But I wasn't finished. I went back to the folder where I had saved the audio file. I found the one where she laughed about changing the will. In that recording, she made cruel jokes about my mother's death and said things like, "She's not here to stop me now." I knew the family needed to hear it. For months, Brenda had told them I was weak, confused, and ungrateful. She made them think she was the one keeping everything together. I was tired of being silent, so I sent the audio to the family group chat. I didn't say anything else. I just sent the file and waited. At first, no one replied. Then one cousin messaged, "Is this real?" Others started asking questions. Some were angry. Some were shocked. One aunt wrote, "I believed her over you. I'm sorry." More messages followed, one after another. The family that had once ignored my calls now wanted to know what really happened. Brenda must have seen the messages. She came out of her room looking pale. She asked me what I had done. I didn't answer. She walked out of the house and didn't come back for hours. When she returned, she looked tired and scared. She didn't shout. She didn't smile. She just stared at me. The lies were falling apart. The mask she had worn for so long was cracking. I had waited quietly, gathered what I needed, and shown the truth. She wasn't the victim. She wasn't the hero. She was the one pretending. And now everyone knew. The day of the court hearing finally came. I stood outside the building, holding a folder full of papers. My heart was beating fast, but I wasn't scared. I had waited for this day for months. I had proof, and I had people who now believed me. When Brenda walked into the courtroom, she looked calm. She wore a neat dress and smiled like nothing was wrong. She even nodded at some of the people sitting in the back. Her confidence looked strong, but I could see it wasn't real. She didn't know everything I had. My lawyer stood up and spoke first. He explained what had happened from the beginning, how my mother had passed, how Brenda moved in, and how everything slowly changed. He showed the judge the power of attorney paper and said it was fake. Then he showed the will that had been changed. He explained how my signature was copied and how a fake notary name had been used. The judge listened carefully. Brenda tried to interrupt a few times, but the judge told her to be quiet. Then came the audio. My lawyer played the recording where Brenda talked about tricking the family and laughed about changing the will. The room was silent as her voice played through the speaker. People looked at her. She looked down. Next, the lawyer showed proof of the stolen insurance money. He had copies of the documents, emails, and phone call record. Everything matched. It was clear she had used my name and taken what was mine. Brenda started to panic. Her face turned red. She stood up and said I was lying. She said I had made it all up to get revenge. But the evidence was too strong. The judge didn't believe her. She sat down again, gripping the table in front of her. When it was my turn to speak, I stood up and told the truth. I spoke slowly and clearly. I said I had trusted Brenda because she was family. I said I had been grieving and didn't know how to protect myself. I said I had found the journals, the recordings, and the truth. The judge nodded and said she had heard enough. She looked at me and said I had done the right thing by coming forward. She ruled in my favor. The house, the money, and everything else would be returned to me. The judge also ordered Brenda to pay for the damage she had caused. Then the officers stepped forward. Brenda looked around the room, hoping someone would stop them. No one did. As they took her hands and began to lead her away, she screamed. Her voice echoed in the room. "You were never supposed to win," she yelled. But I had. I stood there, not angry, just quiet. I watched as they took her out of the room. She was gone. It was over. After all the pain, after all the lies, the truth had spoken louder. The house was finally mine again, but it didn't feel like home right away. It still held the smell of Brenda's perfume. Her clothes were still in the closet. Her things were in every room. I didn't want any of it. I wanted to make the house mine, the way my mother would have wanted it to be. I started with small steps. I gathered all of Brenda's clothes and packed them in bags. Then I took them outside and burned them in a metal bin. The smoke rose into the sky, and I felt like I was letting go of something heavy. Watching her things turn to ash made it easier to breathe. Next, I opened all the windows. Fresh air filled the rooms. I cleaned the walls, the floors, and every corner. I repainted the living room, choosing soft colors that my mother had once talked about using. I took out the old curtains and hung up new ones. I moved the furniture back to where it used to be. It started to feel warm again. In my mother's bedroom, I found her favorite chair. It had been pushed into a corner, dusty and forgotten. I cleaned it and placed it near the window, just like it used to be. I sat there for a long time, remembering her voice and how she used to sit and read. It felt like a small piece of her had come back. I went back up to the attic and brought down more of her journals. I read them slowly, one page at a time. She had written about simple things, baking, gardening, her love for rainy days. She had also written about her hopes for me, her fears, and her quiet dream. I learned more about her in those pages than I had ever known while she was alive. Her words were calm and gentle, even when she was scared. She never gave up. That gave me strength. The house grew quieter, but it wasn't the kind of quiet that hurts. It was peaceful. The bad memories started to fade. I stopped jumping at small sounds. I started sleeping better. I stopped checking over my shoulder. The house was finally safe. One morning, I went to the backyard. The ground was dry and untouched. My mother used to love gardening. She always said the soil was good there. I picked up a shovel and began to dig. I planted flowers she used to grow, lilies, marigolds, and small roses. I worked slowly, thinking of her with every seed I placed. When the flowers started to grow, the yard looked alive again. I placed a small wooden bench beside them. Sometimes I sit there in the evening, looking at the sky. It feels like she's with me. I didn't get peace by fighting. I found it by remembering who my mother really was. She left me love, not just things. Now the house isn't full of shadows. It's full of her light. I sat at my desk with my laptop open, the screen empty for a long time. I didn't know how to start, but once I began typing, the words came easily. I wrote about everything that had happened, the pain, the fear, the lies, and the slow road back to myself. I didn't hold anything back. I wanted others to know what it felt like when someone you trust tries to take everything. After I finished writing, I posted it online. At first, I didn't think anyone would care, but within a few hours, comments started appearing. Then more. People began sharing their own stories. Many had gone through something similar, losing a home, being tricked by family, or being made to feel small and powerless. They wrote things like, "I thought I was alone, and thank you for saying what I couldn't." I read every word, holding back tears. The messages didn't stop. Day after day, more people reached out. They didn't just want to talk, they needed to. They were carrying the same kind of pain, the same kind of confusion. Some just needed someone to listen. So I made a small space online, a place where others could gather and speak freely. It wasn't perfect, but it was quiet and kind. People joined and began helping one another. Some shared tips about legal steps. Others just listened and offered kind words. It became more than I expected, a place of comfort and strength for those who had been silenced. Helping others helped me too. I didn't feel angry all the time anymore. I didn't feel ashamed or lost. The weight I carried started to feel lighter. I had been through something awful, but I had survived. And now, I was helping others do the same. I still visit my mother's grave. Sometimes it's sunny, sometimes it rains. I don't cry like I used to. I kneel beside her stone, close my eyes, and take a deep breath. Then I whisper softly, "Thank you." I don't beg for strength anymore. I thank her for giving it to me. Thanks for watching. Believe in rising when life knocks you down. Share Lena's story with someone who needs strength. True power is silent but unshakable, just like Lena. Don't forget to like, comment your thoughts, and follow for more real stories that inspire and empower. Thoughtful stories, thoughtful gifts.